Welcome everyone to the Friday afternoon webinar series. Matt Wheeler is joining me here today. He is also known as the shoeless therapist. I see him making off his sock because he's going to show us our sock. So yeah, what you got for us today?
Okay, I have no idea what I've shown you before and what I haven't. This is a
Oh,
fun.
they're cute, like little cow print.
It's cow socks.
Yeah,
Utterly amazing.
that,
Oh my
that
God.
was good.
You know,
So,
the funny thing is that most of the time, people don't mention my socks. Like, I'm wearing them and people see them very clearly. But for whatever reason, like half the people who showed up today in my office were like, "Oh my gosh, I love your socks."
oh, there you go.
And I'm like,
Cows
"Oh,
must
apparently,
rule.
I can't
Yeah,
apparently cow print for the win."
yeah, there you go. There you go.
Um, okay. Let's see here. You want me to just jump right in?
What you got for us on the topic today? Let's do
What's
it.
what? Well, so here's what's interesting. I uh I have been training physically training for an event. It's been a long time since I've done a full Ironman event, and I'm doing another one.
Oh.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. And I've trained, oh, you used to be a trail runner, right?
Well, I've done one marathon, I've done a bunch of half marathons, I've done a 100-mile bicycle ride. Yeah, so I've done some
Okay.
of those things. So yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But
Well,
not
and I knew.
I did a mini try, but I never did a real try. So
No, you did a sprint. It's a real try. You just do it fast.
yeah, it's short
Um,
and short. So
well, and I couldn't remember because I thought at one point you had talked to me about how you did trail running, but maybe it was
I
mostly
do.
hiking. Oh, you do
Yeah,
trail
I do.
running.
I do trail running with two new dogs. We haven't tried that yet. So,
That's
but
cool. You
no,
did a
I do that. Yeah.
100-mile
So
bike ride. Well, so here's what has been on my mind, in part because I've been active in, I mean, I'm always riding my bike and I think, I don't know, usually about 100 miles a week on average when I'm not training, just out doing rides because that is part of survival for me emotionally,
feeds your soul. It's a
feeds
good
my
thing.
soul. Well, and it's interesting how many people that I've talked to who do well in recovery, they have found something else to feed their soul. And I try to remind everybody, and if we're talking to an audience, let's say who tends to be early in recovery, it's that reminder that we cannot remove a behavior from our lives without adding something else in. Of course, that's where it can be dangerous to remove, let's say, some sort of addictive behavior, and then we add a different addictive behavior in. We often refer to that as addiction swapping. But think about it conceptually, like if I can't find something else to fill this time, and all I'm focused on is removing this bad thing, you will not generally find yourself successful because you haven't found something to take its place. And it's not always about taking its place, as in, um, it gives me what that thing gave me. It's often about replacing it with something or multiple things that it changes so that now instead of maybe thinking about the unhealthy thing all the time, I'm now thinking about other things that are actually good for me, that are healthy, that I enjoy. But it's tough. So I think this can apply to either person in the relationship. So it's really easy when we've been injured to focus all of our time and energy on healing from the injury. Healing from the betrayal, or I need to be hyper vigilant so that I make sure the betrayal never happens again. And so the reality is, each person in the relationship has to figure out, what am I, what are you and I going to replace in our lives with things that feed our soul, bring us joy, uh, oftentimes connect us, and that can look different ways. I had one clinician I was talking to that was like, look, when basically my spouse was like, hey, I want to train and run the Grand Canyon from rim to rim to rim. And she basically was like, I loved it. And I was like, all right, well, how can I support? What can I do to be team you and help this happen? And even on the day of when the event happened, it was like, hey, here's how I'm going to show up and help. And, I'll be here when you get back and cheer you on from afar, whatever that looks like. Um, but I think it's actually really important for couples in recovery to not only each of you have individual things that you're working towards, whether it's, hey, I'm going to train for a marathon. I've always wanted to run a marathon. I'm going to do a marathon, whatever it might be. Um, and how do we support each other? But what are some things we also want to do together? Whether we're both going to hike or run the Grand Canyon together, whether my brain tends to go to like physical activities, but let's be honest, it could be, hey, we're going to remodel the house together or this part of the house and then move on to that part of the house. Like, what activities and things are we going to plan to do together that require thought and time and energy and planning and uh, in so to give you an example, I used to teach a lot of people to do what are referred to as grit exercises. And the idea is plan something that you want to do, but it can't be something you can just show up and do. Like I've had
Mhm,
people
mhm.
say, I'm trying to think of an example. And I'm not totally sure, but I think like David Goggins gives an example where he just like showed up and did a 100-mile race because he wanted to see if he could do it. And like I think he powered through and was amazing. Like he did it. But the idea around grit isn't let me show up one time and do this thing. It's let me plan for something and daily or nearly daily it takes effort for that. So if somebody gets into recovery and they're like, "Man, I need something." And they're like, "I've always wanted to learn to play guitar." Well, then sign up for guitar lessons and go every week and practice every day. And so then that way you're not just creating something that you're going to go do. It's no, I'm going to change my life and do this thing every single day. I always have to be careful. And I think you and I, Tammy, have talked about this, but I tell people, I like carefully that I'm an alcoholic that's never had a drink because it's in my family, like close people to me, and I know I've stayed away from it because I can feel it in my blood. And but I've gotten into, cycling and exercise, and I knew early on that I had to find something that I could thoroughly enjoy. Well, unfortunately, a lot of us don't have those opportunities. We end up finding addictions, and they rule our lives. So we all have to figure out what is it. Now, sometimes I see people when they get into recovery, recovery becomes their focus. And I always tell people you got to be careful. Yes, recovery is really important, but going to therapy, going to groups, going to 12 step, like all those things are great, but there is a point at which you don't like you don't keep going to therapy, right? Like you find healing and and oftentimes what ends up happening is, we might take a break from therapy for a little while and then go, "Oh, it's probably time I go back a little bit." And then I take a break for a while and then I go see a different therapist who is focused on something else that I've learned that I need to work through, right? The idea is not to be in therapy every week for the rest of our lives. It's to that can be a part and a component, but what is it that we are going to focus on as an individual, as a couple? And though recovery is part of it, if you think about it, recovery is just healthy living, and so all of us need to be in recovery in that regard. But don't make um, don't make therapy, if you will, recovery, the main focus. Oh, we've had this discovery and now therapy, and now everything's all therapy related. It's like, man, if you've always wanted to write a book, start writing a book, right? Like, whatever it is that you've dreamed of doing and learning and growing, start integrating that into your lives, especially as a couple, and how do we show up and help each other in that. And if you really dig into it, there are so many athletes. There is a triathlete who's pretty amazing. His name's Lionel Sanders, and he talks about how uh, getting into doing triathlons, he was able to get, I think it was a heroin addiction.
Mm.
And like he became a professional triathlete after that and really focused all of his efforts. I mean, obviously you need to have the genetics to become a professional or something like that, but at the same time that he may never have found that had he stayed in his addiction. And there's so many athletes and amazing people who have found something else in their life that's been able to propel them, and they've been able to focus, sometimes probably hyper focus, which again, it's all true recovery is really all about balance. Um, so I wanted to kind of throw it out there of like, how much are you guys as couples finding things to connect with, help each other with, prepare with, plan for, so that it's not all about, well, what are you doing or not doing in recovery? Are you slipping or are you not slipping up, right? It's really, hey, what is it that we're really trying to work towards together, to have the kind of lives we both want? How do we support each other? So, uh, Tammy,
Uh,
another thing I'll
Go
throw out
ahead.
there.
Mhm.
Um, Another one, and like think about this. Some people, if you've ever heard of El Camino de Santiago, right? The hike in Spain, right? Like if you're like, hey, I've always wanted to do that hike, like, or I've wanted to travel to these parts of the world, right? Like you guys have to figure out what is it that gets those juices flowing of excitement about living life, hike the Appalachian Trail, whatever it might be, right? So, but I'm curious because Tammy, you and I talk about your paddleboarding, we talk about the dogs and how much you guys are love and are into the dogs. And so, what comes up for you as I throw this out there?
Well, so when I was in my active addiction, let's say exercise was not me. I got sober, and my therapist in treatment said, if you don't make recovery fun, you're not going to make it. Now, I also was one of those
Yeah.
that um alcohol is one of my addictions. I have more. But it's one of those things where in treatment, wow, I'm going to share some really interesting things. In treatment, I was buying because they had a little store. This was a big name treatment back in the day. They're still around, but they had a little gift store. I was going and buying a pound box of chocolate covered peanuts every single day. You can imagine, even taking the alcohol away, that I gained some weight in treatment.
Oh,
So yeah, yeah.
yeah.
So food addiction is also one of my things. But anyway, so I got out of treatment, and it was a few months later, and like I decided I'm going to get healthy. So good addict that I am, I'm going to go run. Like there was like I put on clothes and I ran really hard and about died in 2 blocks. And that was an opportunity for my group and my sponsor to point out, that there's a process for learning to run. Maybe walking, running, walking, running, walking,
Uh-huh.
running, and build up. Not just you're going to go run 100 miles or whatever it is, or
Right.
even
Your
a
first
mile.
time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, especially like I didn't, trot. I was going full tilt. But that was such a great life. I got to tell you, that was a great life lesson to me. Is there's a process. It's like you were talking about the grit of I was not natural. I'm still not naturally good at. I've had decades of practice with running, but I'm not a natural runner like somebody that can go do those things. I have to practice and train. I did rim to rim, not rim to rim to rim. That would still be on my list,
Oh,
but
but rim to rim
I
is so cool.
it is. It is amazing. And I feel really grateful that I got the opportunity to do that. And guess what? I hiked a whole bunch of shorter things in order to be able to do that.
Yeah.
That lesson of about dying, trying to run, was highly applicable to my entire recovery journey, because it was also, you aren't going to just run, sprint, get this done, and whew. It's like, it's the steps, it's doing the work on an incremental basis that it causes change. And that's been lifelong. This is decades later, I still run, so I'm
Right.
grateful for that.
I would imagine that there's a lot of people who are compulsive understand the idea of, man, I'm gonna just go out and do it all right now, right? Like, or I'm gonna buy all the things for this hobby, and then in a month or two, it's no longer the thing, and I have a different one that I'm buying all the things for, right? Like, and so learning how to, and I think the general rule is that, like, for running, you don't increase by more than 10% per week, right? And so it's like, yeah, learning, like when I tell people, if you sign up for a marathon, you can go online and find marathon training plans for 24 weeks or however many weeks they are. And you go out and you just follow that schedule, and, or what do they call them? Like couch to 5K plans.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
like, go grab something like that and just start ticking away at it and showing up every day and doing the things. But too many of us, it's like, I want to do something amazing. Oh, I've given up this compulsive behavior. Oh, I'm gonna go do something I've never trained for and done before, and somehow I'm gonna be amazing at it. And when we aren't, we're like, well, that stinks. I'm gonna find something else.
Yes, and the immediate "I'm a failure" message can come through. Like, I mean, I had that. It was like, I'm sure I had was so dramatic. I can't do this and all of it, but it was like, well, you could learn to, but you're going to need to practice. And what you talked about, like, and when I was running races, during COVID, I made a commitment to not sign up for virtual races, because I was like running in Scotland around my neighborhood, and so I was getting all these little medals, and I was like, this is ridiculous. I told my husband, I will talk to him before I sign up for yet another medal. Anyway, but when I was running, in Phoenix doing, the different races, he was on the sidelines cheering me on. He would often be lying and saying, you're really close to the end, and I was like, I know I'm not just a block. So anyway, but he was very supportive of all that, and he's let me do all those things. And he has interests that are different than mine. So and we're supportive of that. And then we have, he brought up dance lessons, and so we've been doing dance lessons, ballroom dance lessons. We're not good, we're fine, but you know what? No, like that's not the goal. The goal
Right,
is the time together and doing
right.
something that challenges their body and brains. But pottery, book clubs, cooking, like lots of people learn to cook together. Great. So we are talking a little bit more in athletic, activities, things, but it doesn't have to be that. I mean, like, I love that you talk about travel. You know, the way my husband travels and the way I travel are very different. And I've learned that if I'm traveling with him, it's called relationship travel. I mean, I named it. It's called relationship travel because it's a way slower pace, and we do things differently. And it's because I really value time with my husband, and I'm going to do it that way. My daughter and I went on an adventure, and we were, doing the waterfall rappelling, the zip lining, the whitewater rafting, the like every day an
So
adventure.
when you're not traveling with him and you're traveling with somebody more like you do adventure traveling where it's like, we're gonna do as much as we can,
Pack
and
it
we're gonna
in.
and pack it in. And you're like the one, okay, here's our schedule, here's where we're going. That's awesome.
But when I'm with my husband, then I mean, I'm really intentional, because otherwise I'm going to
Oh
be
yeah.
resentful and annoyed the whole time. And so
You
I
you
understand
know
that
going in, this is the type of
I've
travel we're
learned,
doing together. Oh yeah.
I've learned it
Oh yeah.
wasn't that was another life lesson of like, come on. And then I was like, oh, this isn't working. And so I learned that that is not what we're going to do. And if I plan that now, when we're traveling together, there's usually a little bit of time where I'm going to go off and I'm going to go for a run by myself. Okay. I mean, there's ways that I navigate it. So I'm taking care of me. It's not just I'm compromising on
Mm.
everything, but we can have a lovely, lovely, meaningful trip. I think of these things because because of that compromise. So I love when you're talking about the grit. It's not something that was not something either of us did naturally. We had to figure out the
Figure it
path.
out.
Yeah, but it's something that is good for both of us. And one more thing I want to talk about the recovery stuff. So I know partners like are like now I'm going to use he and she. Now he's gone all the time to all of these meetings and rah, 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 like I'm still not a priority. And
Yeah,
I'm going like early on, please look at this as an investment in
right.
your future relationship because to get that foundation, we don't do life well. And that's going to help us learn to do it well. And then, yes, now I also have, I've got retired friends that, go to a noon meeting every day. Part of me thinks their spouses are probably really happy that they're getting out of the house for an hour a day. But it's one of those like, do they need to be there? No, they've got long-term recovery. It's a social thing for them. And, but as
Right.
long as it works for both, people, great, but if it's like, yeah, I'm escaping, I need to go to my meeting. Well, you've been doing that for 10 years, 7 days a week. That would feel like you're skipping out on life and responsibilities. It would be hard to be, integrated into family. And I love as a therapist, you were going like, this is not a 30-year commitment, you need to show up at my office every week for 30 years, so
Oh,
yeah.
yeah, and I unfortunately I've heard people like talk they'll talk about that. They're like, I'm never gonna go to therapy because I know it's like, that I'm gonna have to be there every week for the rest of my life. And I'm like, no way. Like, I know as a therapist, I'm trying to help you achieve what goals you want to achieve, you're needing to achieve. Now, there are clients of mine who I've seen for quite a few years, and we might be at once a month or once every 3 months or once every 6 months, or somebody will reach out and be like, hey, I haven't seen you for a year, can I check in? And it's like, sure, right? Like, if that's helpful and you need it, let's do it. But I'll tell you, as a clinician, I love it when people are like, I'm doing amazing and I've got what I need, and I'm not, maybe I'm never coming back. And I'm like, great. Like, as long as you have found the healing you need. And sometimes I'll even tell people, don't see me. You've gotten what you can from me. Go see a therapist that specializes in this or who can help you with that. And so that's another thing that's any therapist who's like, you've got to see me forever. I'm like, makes
Yeah,
me,
no, I love that. And I was thinking because I've been on this journey a while. I've had therapists back in Michigan and I have a great therapist in Arizona and I was seeing her for a while and then I didn't need to see her and then COVID hit and I needed to see her and then last year I went and saw her for a couple times and like I like knowing she's there like I like she's there for me even if I don't I'm not calling her. So but and a session or two and I'm like I'm I'm feeling like I'm grounded again and moving forward, so am I open to other things? Yes. I sent you that I went to the scalar sound energy thing that
oh,
was
that's
super
right. Yeah,
cool,
yeah.
yeah, so I'm open to I want to experience things that I believe will be helpful, on my journey and I'm careful for me and I'm not making any, but I'm not going to choose the things that are um, um, uh, medication, we'll call it medication oriented. I need
Right.
to be, like that's just me, but I want to see what can help and, enhance my recovery. So, and with that one, so I had sent Matt the information and I've encouraged my husband to go. And the next time I go, I'm going to see if he wants to join me. Like those are the
Right.
things. It's like, let's go try this together,
Let's try
so
some different stuff.
yeah,
Yeah, for
yeah,
sure.
yeah. Okay, so we have a question. The first one is, and please throw in more, and it can be off the topic that we were talking about. Betrayed partner, addict is out of the house, used entitled behavior when he felt exposed to stay out one-on-one at girl's apartment 3 to 5 a.m. He said nothing happened and minimized. He said nothing happened. Yeah, he's silent and in shame freeze after I set necessary boundaries since he's not in recovery. I don't know how to deal with proceeding without knowing if he escalated to physical acting out. Any suggestions? Don't know if I can stay anymore. So I just I hear you. I'm mad. Like I'm reading like without knowing if it escalated, Like
Well,
whether
here's
it did or didn't, I'm going like,
well,
wow,
yeah, that's
yeah,
exactly what I'm gonna say.
yeah, yeah,
Let's say it didn't escalate.
yeah.
What I'm looking at here is you were out somewhere else at 3 in the morning. You weren't with me. It wouldn't matter if I mean, like hypothetically, it would to me, if my partner was out at the bar with friends, I mean, that I might go, hey, I don't know that this works for me. Like, we've got to figure out like what level of commitment and connection do we need in order to be secure and connected in a relationship. And so obviously if there was escalated behavior than more than what's being reported, well, sure, I can appreciate why that would be painful and and a reason why somebody would ask themselves like, can I do this? But really, like, you can be in a relationship and the other person is not willing to show up or figure out how to learn to show up in ways that I need, and it has nothing to do with whether or not they're um escalating their behavior to cheating or whatever it might be. It's like you get to a space where you ask yourself, how long can I be in a relationship? How many times can I give this person the opportunity and teach them what I'm needing in order to have a secure relationship before I say, I'm not sure this is going to work for me? And so it's interesting because I wouldn't make this about if the behavior's escalated, I'm going to make this about, hey, you went somewhere that both of us agree would not be okay. And whether you did anything or not beyond, our relationship agreements sexually is not is that's a whole nother violation of an agreement, right? Like, so don't ah, gosh, how do I say this? Don't minimize it in your own head and think that it has to be that in order for me to be justified in figuring out whether or not I can do this relationship, right? And I think sometimes we do that. Like, man, I I don't even know how to say it. Like, sometimes in our head we think, "Wow, I wish my boss would do this so that I could quit my job," or "I wish my partner would do this so that I could get out of the relationship." It's like we tell ourselves, "Boy, if it was escalated, then I could take action." And it's like, man, if you have enough history and you have worked towards change and it's not working, you have to ask yourself, at what point do you give yourself permission to say, hey, I've given everything I have and I'm ready to move forward, even if I look back and wish something could have been different, or if I learned that I could have done something different that could have helped, I'm ready to move forward. I really don't think this is about whether there was escalated behavior or not. If this is the data I mean, that I'm looking at and it doesn't work for you, then perhaps you have your answer. Like, and again, this would go back to, yeah, my suggestions are focusing on where can you get healthy connection for yourself? What is your recovery looking like? Um, I mean, you say, I think you said he's out of the house. And so it's like, what are you needing in order for you to get the stability you need to be stable and secure yourself? And so that's more of, I don't blame you for saying you don't know if you can stay anymore. I think everybody has to get into that position and figure out, well, how much longer can I try? How much longer am I willing to see if changes are made? And I've seen people last a long time in really broken relationships and something clicks and that person ends up coming around and they're really glad they stayed. And at the same time, I've seen people wait so long that I'll say, hey, are you comfortable recognizing that your partner is, based on what we've seen, most likely never going to change? And if you're okay with that, then I'm okay with it. Like, if you can figure out how to be happy in that arrangement, that's great. Like, if you know what your boundaries are, whatever they might be, that you feel safe and comfortable in the relationship, go for it, right? Like none of us are in a position to tell another person whether they should stay or not. And so it's really just at that space of how much longer are you willing to wait? How much longer do you need before you feel at peace and you say, "Hey, I've given everything and I'm good to move forward." Such a difficult position for you to be in. Um, but but I love it because there are so many people who are in this position. So I'm glad that you're being vulnerable and sharing it.
Me too. And I read he's not in recovery. I read he went over to a female's house. I am 100% confident you didn't include this, but it wasn't like a discussion of like, I'm going to leave the house and I'm going to go over to female's house, and nothing's going to happen, but I'm going to do this. We both mutually agree. No, I like, I often say if your spouse was sitting right here, would that person be okay with whatever it is you're doing? And I'm reading in this, no, all of this, he felt entitled, so he went and did this, and then he's like, oh, nothing happened, but he's in freezing up, so there's a lot there. I'm with Matt. If you can be in a relationship with someone who's in active addiction, because if you're not in recovery, you're in active addiction. There's no in between. Like, you're not well, you can say, "Hey, I'm abstinent," but that's just not doing what we're not supposed to do. So that doesn't really help. Recovery is I'm working to change. Recovery would be like, yeah, I'm not going to go. I need to leave the house because we had a big fight or we need to cool off. I'm going to go over to my male friend's house, not my female whoever's. I'm going to choose differently, and I don't hear any of that, especially when you say he's not in recovery. So and what Matt said about things clicking, and it can click either way, but I often see partners that are like their head is thinking I need to leave, but their heart is going, I have hope for this yet. And then when that aligns either way, I'm either like, yeah, I need to take care of myself and leave, or wow, I do see some progress and I can hang in there longer. Great, but no judgment. I did put in the chat. I do this lots of webinars, but we did a series on should I stay or should I go? I think the first one is Kristen Snowden's, and it's, just journaling about those questions. Where do you see yourself? I think it's great when both partners do it, because then you can compare notes of like, yeah, we're really both mostly into this and we just need some help to get, aligned. But sometimes it's like, well, I'm 80% in and you're 20% in, and like we're at a big disconnect, and either you get the professional help to help you move forward, but the challenge is, like you've got someone in active addiction, so how do you take care of you, regardless of what he's doing or not doing? And I will say this too, nothing you did or didn't do caused this. Like even if you guys have a fight, like he used that as an excuse to go over to a female's house, that he wanted to do that, so that's his justification, but that didn't mean it was you didn't make him do it, unless you drove him over there and knocked on the door and said, hey, he's staying with you, which you didn't. So
Yeah. Like even if
yeah,
you did, and like
yeah.
it's like, yeah, gosh, there's still a choice, right? Somebody in recovery is not going to choose, right? Somebody in recovery is going to like know that whatever choices are made, that ultimately it comes down to them, you know?
Hmm.
You can
Hmm.
put a glass of alcohol in front of an alcoholic and they have to decide at some point, like, what choice am I going to make, right? So even if you put it right in front of them, not saying that that's healthy to do, there still has to be a accountability.
And I will tell you, I've been at things with friends who do drink, and that's entirely up to it's me, not them.
Right.
And there have been times, like if I can get a whiff of it, it kind of turns my stomach, and I'll just say, would you mind, holding that drink closer to you? I don't ask them to quit. I just say, would you mind holding that closer to you? Or I'll scooch myself away a bit. I'll take care of me, and if it was like, if it came down to it, I would leave the meeting. But it's usually I just need to not smell it. It's just, it's just annoying to me to smell.
Sure,
So
sure.
it just works better for me. But I, yeah, like, I would leave even if it was the most important meeting, which, or get together or whatever, I would walk out the door if I thought my sobriety was at all at risk.
Oh,
It's too
totally.
precious. So,
Oh,
uh,
yeah.
okay, the next one. After multiple D days, my partner finally started seeing a CSAP, but reluctant to start 12-step. His therapy was twice a month for the past 2 months, so it's still pretty early in the process. I found out last week that he acted out at least 3 times with sex workers in the past month. We have separated, and my question is this common for an SA to get worse before they get better? I'm ready to give up permanently.
Yeah, I don't, I'll just speak to the I'm ready to give up permanently. Man, it's such a hard place to be. And multiple D days, depending on like how long you've waited to start seeing any progress, like it makes so much sense why you're just like exhausted, wondering if there's any hope. So totally, totally get that. The question, is it common for things to get worse before it gets better? I to put it simply, here's what's first, before I answer the question, I want you to explore like, do you know what your limits are? Because here's the hard part. You, you need to be okay with your limits, like no matter what. And what I mean by that is if you know that your physical, emotional, personal health can only take so much. Like you've got to figure out what those limits are and what's best for you. If as long as you're not acting in a way that's like, I'm going to teach you a lesson or I'm going to give you a consequence. It's like, no, it isn't about consequences. It's not about teaching lessons. It's really about figuring out what do I need for me. Um, and so, like, if you have a good idea of your limits and you understand what your needs are, make sure to focus on that. But I will say this, I tell people all the time when they come into therapy, hey, you need to understand that it often gets worse before it gets better. Because you're going to come into therapy and if you think about it like, somebody comes in with a broken bone and it's like, hey, we have to set the bone and then we need to do x-rays and then we might need to do surgery and we like whatever the medical complication is, coming in with the initial injury does not mean that, oh, just because I've now come to the hospital or the surgery or whatever it is, that somehow great, I'm going to start feeling better. Oftentimes it's like, no, the process of finding healing can be incredibly difficult, painful, often have setbacks, require, multiple rounds of PT, that kind of thing. So I tell people when you come into my office, like, we're going to start digging in. And usually early in recovery, we're not digging in as much as we are like pushing people like, hey, let's figure out what your self-care routines are and let's figure out how to get you a solid foundation and let's get figure out how to get you a good recovery circle of connection and friends that you can open up to and be honest with, right? There's so much that we're working on to try and get a good foundation, but we're also digging in some sense because we're like, well, we need to understand, what does this look like? What does the past look like? What's happened? What hasn't happened? And so as you dig in, and it happens naturally, it is not uncommon for somebody to feel the pain or the guilt, the shame, and when they feel that shame and their go-to coping mechanism is still this unhealthy sexual behavior, then yes, that can often be their go-to. And so what I'm often looking for in this regard is if something like that happens, are they bringing it forward or did they hide it? Did you have to discover it again? If it happened and they brought it forward, um, then, well, that's helpful. But the truth is, what are my limits? What can I work with? What risk am I willing to put myself into? Sometimes, depending on how worse it gets before it gets better, or so, it's, hey, we might need inpatient, like seeking integrity, for instance, right? To where it if it gets worse, we need inpatient because you need an environment where it can't get worse while we're getting some heavy duty uh, all day long treatment for several weeks in a row. And so we're coming out with a much better foundation rather than an hour long, once or twice a week, and it's getting worse. And I still have access to all of my unhealthy behaviors, that sort of thing. So that's where a clinician and an individual and a partner are often trying to figure out like what level of treatment do we need here. And so but yes, in some regard, it does. It often gets worse before it gets better. You're allowed to have limits, though, and you might need to escalate the level of treatment depending on what that looks like.
So, and I agree, it can get worse before it gets better, but and that you need to have your limits. But I hear some really important data. This has been going on. You've had multiple D days. He finally started seeing a CSAT. He's seen this person 4 times in
Mhm.
2 months. So, and he's reluctant. Like I hear a whole bunch of "I'm not willings." So I often talk about, well, it's not just me, but real recovery takes 2 to 5 years if you're getting the help that you need, if you're setting that strong foundation. And I'm sorry, but this person isn't even really checking boxes. I mean, seeing, I don't care if you're seeing the best CSAT on the planet, and if that's the only thing you're doing, 50
Yeah,
minutes twice a month to combat something that's 24/7 and years or decades old. I mean, the odds are like that doesn't work. The math doesn't work.
right. Yeah, no, and that's why I talked about the escalation of treatment is like we've got to figure out like what level of a struggle are we having? How do we escalate the work we're doing, the level of treatment? Twice a month probably isn't going to cut it. Now, at the same time, as a partner, you can go and say, hey, I'm worried this isn't going to cut it. And at the same time, you can't force it. I don't think it's healthy for you to try and force it. If you try to push recovery, they're not figuring out recovery for themselves. And so you saying, and not as a threat, not as a consequence, not trying to force recovery, but you basically saying, hey, I know I've got about 30 days left in me. If I don't see this happen, I'm not sure how much longer I can stay, right? And it's this idea of I'm not threatening because that's not helpful. I'm not going to give you a consequence. I'm literally sitting with where I'm at saying, I don't know how much longer I can do this. Now, but again, it can't be about you as a partner trying to motivate that change or force that change. It needs to be about what your needs actually are. And that's where I think a lot of problems do end up coming up is that as a partner, I'm not focused on what my needs really are. I'm focused on trying to make recovery work for my partner. That is a total disaster. You do not want to focus on their recovery. It needs to be about your recovery and you can tell them, I would imagine this would be helpful. I would think this is helpful. I hear that this is helpful, but you've got to figure that out. And then you've got to decide how long you can do that type of recovery before it's worth it to you to potentially lose this relationship. Because I don't know how much longer I can do this. But don't
Yeah, and
say that over and over and then never make a change.
right.
Right. So don't, and that's a thing I see all the time is I'll have a couple come in and one of them will be like, well, I don't know how much longer I can do this. Not realizing they say that every day. Right. And so there's this part of me, I'm like, oh, that's your way of just saying this hurts. And so your partner ends up hearing the message, oh, it sounds like you can do it forever. Well, learn to say this hurts and I don't like it instead of, I don't know how much longer I can do it, right? Learn to, anyway. So make it about figuring out how to get your needs met, not managing them.
And I find that saying that the things that I'm seeing are telling me that you're not in a place where you're taking moving forward in a recovery journey seriously. Therefore, I'm going to take care of me. I'm going to be over here. I'm going to be doing, my betrayed partner drop-in groups. I'm going to be doing the things I need to do to get support and help to move forward so that I'm taking care of me regardless of what you're doing or not doing. I would love to. I would vision us being able to, navigate this path forward together, but it's not safe. There's not an ability to build trust. So if you're willing to do that, and I'm always fascinated. So Scott, my partners or my colleague Scott and I did a webinar in 27 of 24 on navigating the 12 steps, and we unpacked, because within the S community, the 12 steps, there's more of them. I'm on the board of directors for the SCA, Sexual Compulsives Anonymous, but there's a whole bunch of them where, alcohol, you go to AA, I mean, it's different. And so we did one on how do you navigate that, and then the myths. And usually someone who's reluctant to go to a 12-step program has some preconceived notion without going, and the reality is, I mean, there's research on 12 steps and they are highly effective for transformation, which is what the goal is. In the 12-step programs, we talk about steps 4 through 9 are housekeeping steps. And then there's promises, we will be amazed before we are halfway through. Well, there's 12 steps, do the math, so after steps 4 and 5, we start seeing that our lives start to get better. Someone who's not in recovery, he's not, he isn't even on the recovery path yet. He's like looking at it, going like, well, maybe, this is me saying it. So take what you need and leave the rest. But it's the worst place to be. Like people don't understand. Not acting out and not in recovery is the worst place to be. But it's also why he's still, yes, but he's acted out. He's still acting out. He is still in active addiction. And whether the cycle of addiction is, once a month, once, every 6 months or whatever, he's still hanging on to his acting out behavior. So he hasn't even abstinent yet. So nope, added changes until the pain of change is less than the pain of staying the same. Right now, he's still doing all this other stuff, and unfortunately, you're you're hurt,
But it,
understandably, in all this.
but again, it's not the partner's job to make the pain of staying the same worse, right? Like, meaning too often as a partner, we want to, well, then I'm going to make the
Oh
pain
yeah,
of staying the
I'm gonna
same
make it
worse.
vengeful for you.
Right.
Yeah,
And it's
no.
like, no, you don't want to go there. You are going to mess up your own recovery work if you focus on his recovery work. And so it's like you've got to figure out how to make your focus your recovery work. So, but I love it.
Well,
Like,
and even like the pain that like if you start doing something different and you go, "Yep, I'm out. I'm taking care of me." That can be different. Like
yeah,
like it doesn't have to be there's a big old negative it can be you have wait, you can't withdraw from me. You're
right.
abandoning me.
But again, that's about
Mm,
I'm choosing to go because I'm realizing that's what I need. Not I'm doing it hoping you'll
right.
feel the pain and come clamoring back. Like
Yeah, yeah.
we can't do that as a partner because that sets up so many potential problems. That's its own form of like manipulation. If I'm choosing to go, and I've seen probably with more women, once they decide that they're done. And more than it seems like with men. And so I always tell men, like, careful. Once a woman decides she's done, your chances often are over. Once that truly that shift has happened. And I only have anecdotal evidence behind that, but it's but with but again, just yes, the you doing your recovery and becoming a healthier, better person can often create more pain in them because they start to see you getting healthier, living better, sometimes choosing to leave, and then they will be faced with more pain. But again, not because you're trying to manage that at all. If you focus on your recovery, the pain will or will not happen, and it's up to them to figure out if they're going to move.
Well, and you talk about clamoring back. I know you've seen this pattern a lot too, is like, we're, like we left, separated, whatever. and then clamoring back and nothing's changed, so or it may be good, on good behavior for a bit, but ultimately what happens is the same patterns repeat because there's been nothing to change
Hmm.
either person. You fall back into the same routines and then, you know, repeat, like 3 months later, that whole, leave, reunite, you know, so
Well, that ends up,
interrupting the system. Yeah, go
yeah,
ahead.
that ends up becoming its own issue, right? So,
Hmm. Hmm. Okay, the next one. At what point does the betrayed partner become the problem in the relationship? My husband is doing all the things and is committed to his recovery. I just can't clear my mind of the years of porn watching and acting out. I want to be a bigger person, but it might be too much for me. Feeling guilty, tired, and sad. We are 11 months in. That is still, no offense, early for you. He knew all along he was doing it. You did not. So,
oh,
what do you
sure.
have, Matt?
No, yeah, you know what's interesting is my first thought is, and again, listen to my long answer because the first part could sound offensive. It's funny when, first of all, I hear, at what point does a betrayed partner become the problem in the relationship? Well, if you're in a relationship and there's problems, you're part of the problem, meaning, unfortunately, relationships and the problems that exist within a relationship are a result of both of us being people and having problems, if that makes any sense. And so it's funny because I just want to point out, yes, there, I have to be careful because sometimes a betrayed partner might hear me say, you guys are equal in being problematic. And I'm like, oh, no, 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 that's not what I'm suggesting. Like, your partner comes to you with this awful disclosure, and that is a much bigger piece of pain than maybe the pain you bring to the relationship by having your own issues, which we all have, right? However, when I'm working with couples, I'm trying for both of them to start owning and recognizing and seeing their negative behaviors throughout the cycle of their relationship. And I will encourage, regardless of the level of hurt or pain that we've both caused, our main focus should be on what can I do about me and my behaviors and the problematic issues that I have, and how can I focus on changing those? Because those are the only things I can control. So in some sense, we all are a problem in every relationship we have. It's just how much are we going to lean in to try and understand and learn how to change that? And is that changeable? Now, you're actually asking a different question, but I just wanted to point out that the truth is in any relationship, it requires a good, healthy accountability from both of us if possible, right? What you're asking, though, I actually think is a very insightful thing. So, first of all, let's say, like, there is a point when I'm working with couples, usually early on, as I'm working with a hurt partner, I'm focusing on giving and showing empathy towards the hurt and pain of the partner who's been hurt, and I'm doing my best to help the partner who did the hurting to, like, also lean in and be empathetic, and that takes a lot of work. Now, I'm not ever pushing a partner who's been hurt, like, hey, you need to hurry up and forgive. You need to hurry up and forgive. I always tell people, you'll figure out forgiveness. Like, it could take you the rest of your life, and that's okay. But there is a point at which I'm watching to see, is the hurt partner ever able to get empathetic with the partner who did the injury? Because at some point, there needs to be a reciprocal empathy. And I'm not talking about an equal level of empathy, right? As if your empathy needs to be equal for the hurt and pain that they have in their life, and we are equals in the amount of empathy we each need and deserve. No, if I've caused a larger pain, me learning to have empathy and compassion to the degree of the pain in which I've caused might be much higher than the amount of empathy you have to learn to show up in as a hurt partner. And so don't make it equality as in I have to own that I've caused just as many problems or pain or hurts in the relationship. It's not what I'm talking about at all, because I don't even know how we would measure that. But there is a point at which, if I recognize I don't have empathy in me. The hurt is too big. The pain is it won't doesn't seem to go away. If I can't have empathy, do I want to be in this relationship? If I can't ever have empathy for my partner, is this the type of a relationship I want to have? And now, what's interesting is I'm hearing you struggle with something else. I don't know if you don't have empathy. You'd have to help me understand that. What it sounds like is you're having like intrusive thoughts about the porn watching, about the acting out. And if I'm going to be honest, I would push you, you need to do some work because that likely has been trauma in your mind. And so you're struggling to get those out of your head because you haven't worked through those from the understanding that those are trauma responses. And so I see with couples all the time where as they're bringing like healthy sex back into their relationship, intrusive thoughts can come into the minds of either one of them, really, and they're like, hey, what do we do? And so I'll work with people on, hey, let's talk about some different tools. Let's talk about some things that can help the intrusive thoughts. Now, if we get to a point where I realize this is a trauma response, right, we might need to escalate the level of therapy, specifically treating it as trauma more than just an intrusive thought. And so at that point, it's, perhaps some EMDR work or other type of trauma work that reduces the physiological responses, changes the brain neural pathways, and helps us to find healing so that that doesn't come in and hit us that way. So sometimes when, let's say, the partner who does the hurt makes a lot of changes and starts becoming a different person and starts showing up in the relationship, the partner who's been betrayed often has to go, oh, I now have to start working on how this has impacted me because I'm not showing up with the same level of vulnerability or the same level of recovery work. Well, that's why earlier I was saying your focus can't be on his recovery. It needs to be on your recovery because hopefully then you both are growing together. And obviously that's going to happen at like different scales, if that makes sense, where one of you's a little ahead of the other, and you hopefully are going back and forth as you're climbing the ladder, if you will. And so it's not uncommon that that happens. But again, there's multiple possibilities here. Do you need to do some trauma work and you're having some intrusive thoughts? Do you need to boost your recovery up so that you can work through, so that you can start showing up vulnerably, even though that's terrifying and risky because of the potential for him to hurt you again? So many different possibilities there. I hope my answer covered multiple options.
And I was with you because I was thinking like this feels like the more trauma, the intrusive thoughts, and
Yeah.
we've got webinars on that. And I did put Dr. Jessica Lamar talked about like the hidden wounds of betrayal and including the grief. Like there's a bunch of grief in this too. Like all, you talk about like what he was doing, but all the years of porn watching that he could have been spending time with you and think like it's all of those little nuance things that you're probably not yet able to to put into categories. And she gave some really good things, but lots of great webinars. Kristen Snowden, Debbie McCrae, all talk about those type of things and can give you some things to do self-care and soothing. Debbie McCrae did, she did stop it. I didn't pay attention to it was 7 times, and so I was doing it for like 45 seconds. It still worked, but stop it. And it'll stop it, it'll interrupt, but ice on your wrist, any of those things that can break the cycle in the moment so that you can get back up to here. You're really early in the process. It's really painful. And, you're here. I believe that you will work through this and find healing for yourself. We've got resources for you. And then I just want to add, the next one is thank you. I needed to hear that. FYI, discovered the recent acting out. He did not disclose it to me. Red flag indeed. And then I put, the Healthy Boundaries work group started this week. You would have missed 1 week, but you can still join. Lot that happens often with work groups, so that's not a big deal. But to get that support to understand what your boundaries are, including internal boundaries, those are really easy to slide through and betray. But also having the support, to figure out what they are and hold them, could be really useful. So any of those things, email tami@seekingintegrity.com if you've got questions or I can be of help. Matt, great to see you. I'll see you in December. We're not going to be here the week of Thanksgiving. We won't be here
Yep.
the week of Christmas. But watch the calendar because there's a bunch of things that are on around the holidays that are a little different. And I do have some special edition webinars coming up. So check all those out as well. So have a great Thanksgiving, you and your family. So
Oh, you as well. See you guys
thank
soon.
you. Bye.